Welcome to the Speak with People podcast, where we believe that healthy communication is the key to unlocking your leadership potential. We are the go-to resource for leaders looking to greatly improve their communication skills, whether it's one-on-one interactions, team settings, public speaking, or your digital communication. By improving these skills, leaders can create stronger connections and drive positive change within their organization. Each and every episode, we sit down with leaders from various fields, just like you're grabbing a cup of coffee with them. We dive into real, practical conversations. Our goal is to help you transform your communication skills so you can lead more effectively, build stronger relationships, and make a lasting impact. So grab your favorite drink, settle in, and let's learn together. Well, how do you text someone from Gen Z in a way that gets a response instead of being left to just read? How do we get to a place where we know how to text between the generations? How do we know how to say the right things? There's 4 different generations in the workplace now, and so we're all communicating in different ways. And so in the process of that, how do you navigate ghosting? How do you navigate, trying to get a response out of people? Well, welcome to the Speak with People podcast. Today, we are diving into all of these issues. We're in week 5 of this Texting with People, Not at Them series. And as you know, we are the podcast where we empower leaders to connect authentically, inspire action, and elevate their impact through the art and science of communication. I cannot wait to dive in. We're going to dive in today with a very special guest. I'm so excited to have Kamryn join us. Kamryn is the owner of Articulate Advantage. He helps leaders every single day improve their communication skills. He also works for BNI, which if you've done any type of networking over the years, you probably know all about BNI, but he'll tell us more about that. He's also a student and he's a member of Gen Z. And I'm so honored, so excited, so blown away by his communication already. And so Kamryn Reynolds, welcome to the Speak with People podcast.
Thanks, Jason. Enjoy it. Absolutely. I'm excited.
This is awesome. Okay, so why don't you take us into your story just a little bit? Who you are, what you do, what's gotten you to this place?
That's a good question. Well, I was born in 2003 to Spencer and Trisha. No, I was kidding. But I was born in 2003. I'm 21 currently, so I am a proud member of Gen Z, as proud as you can get of that. Now, it's interesting because we have grown up in such a different technological age with all the different advancements. We are completely different from the millennials who grew up in their late teens, early 20s having these technologies and all of the social media as excitement. And we're different from, my little sister. She's just grown up with it and she hasn't known anything else. And so we're in a tentative place along the generational gap in the early 2000s because right as we're coming into middle school, high school is when social media really is taking off and everybody becomes glued to their phones with TikTok and all those things. And I was actually rode the perfect wave to have an in on TikTok and started growing just through random videos of anything you can think of, just dumb things doing with my friends, and grew a following up to 455,000 followers at one point. And it's just I have no clue what I'm doing. There's no plan behind it. It was just making dumb videos with my friends. And so that leads me to today where did all of that, had some fun with it. Then I left after I graduated from high school here in Florida, and I lived in Argentina for 2 years, serving a church mission trip, a Christian mission trip, and learning Spanish, learning how to communicate in that language and a different culture and all the fun things that come along with that. And then moving back home, getting into Articulate Advantage and BNI and just having fun with all sorts of things.
Wow, man, so much to unpack. You in your short 21 years, you've experienced a lot, and I love that. That's incredible. Let's go for a second to Argentina. What was it like when you first got there? Did you not know Spanish when you arrived? Was it a pure I just know El Baño? What was that?
Absolutely. So in my church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, you get a 6-week period called the Missionary Training Center, and normally you go in person, but this was right at the tail end of 2021. Everything's still locked down to COVID, so I had 6 weeks of Zoom classes on gospel doctrine from the Bible and Spanish and different things like that. And I got to Argentina December 3rd, 2021. I was one of the first American missionaries since COVID locked down the country in that area. And I knew nothing. You come out of the FBC, you're in a warm environment, Everybody's like, you're doing so good, and they have like these little thing follow along, so you're like, I'm amazing. You're not. You're really bad. You don't know anything. So I showed up there and like, oh crap. But luckily, you're always with one other person who is your trainer for your first handful of weeks to months, depending. And my trainer luckily knew English. He was from Buenos Aires, Argentina, the capital, and we were down in the south. If people know Argentina, it's the Patagonia. It's the mountains. It's beautiful, but also
Mm.
the desert, the Patagonia, and that's where I started in a little town called Zapala. And it's known as the Windy City of Argentina. So not only did I not know Spanish, I couldn't talk to people other than saying, hey, how's it going? And then saying a prayer in Spanish. I was also emptying my pockets of sand every day, and we were advised to wear glasses or sunglasses because of the sand coming at you all day, every day.
Wow.
So it was definitely not ideal for a gringo like me coming and not knowing anything and just being hammered by life in such a different atmosphere. But you pick it up pretty fast. Spanish came in like 4 months to 6 months is when I really was like, I can speak Spanish. Then you get the accent down and you get different things. And so by the end of the 2 years, you've got it pretty solid because all day, every day, it's just talking to people and not talking at them. Hopefully is the goal, right?
Boy, I love that. I love that. That's huge. So you're not super active on TikTok right now. So do you have any thoughts on it shut down overnight and people are losing their minds and were you kind of oblivious to all that because you've kind of pulled back, or do you have any thoughts on all of that?
Well, that's the funny. So yeah, I haven't been really active on TikTok since I was 18, before my mission. I got back and never really got into it because it's a different animal now.
Yeah.
The algorithm's different. What people are looking for is different. The demographic, and so my just random videos of whatever don't get the same traction as they used to, which is totally fine. And yeah, I wasn't really up to date on the oh no, TikTok's ending whole thing. And I
Hmm.
actually really found out about it and learned that it was real because I heard things on like Instagram and different things that oh no, it's ending, and I was like, people have been saying that for years.
Yeah.
But I was in the Salt Lake City airport coming home from going to a buddy's wedding, and I'm at Panera in line getting some mac and cheese with bacon on top and some good food. And the worker, she was like screaming to the guy in the back. She goes, "Hey, TikTok's done. TikTok's gone." I was like, really? I'd pull out my phone. It wouldn't let me in. I was like, well, there it goes. So not sure how to feel about it. I haven't been super active with it, but it is fun to go back and look and like, oh, I have 400,000 followers, even though it doesn't really mean much.
Right. So what does it mean though? Because not many people on any social media platform, I mean, the percentage is so low that gets, hundreds of thousands. Like, so what was that like as a teenager, having hundreds of thousands of people follow you? And did it like fuel positive things? Did it fuel negative things? Did you get paid at all from all those views? Like, walk us into, because that's so fascinating. We're going to talk about texting in a second, but I just got
Yeah,
to ask these questions because not many
absolutely.
people get that type of reach.
Yeah. So with that, it really okay. So it all started as a bet between my friend group. We were sitting watching The Grinch one night. I think it was 2020 or something like that before Christmas, and we're like, all right, we're bored. And so one thing led to the next, and we started this challenge, and it was like December 5th or something like that, early December. And we had this challenge between our friend group. We split in half and said, all right, whoever can get the most followers on TikTok before Christmas, the other team has to make them breakfast. So just fun. And so my group, we went to my buddy's. His name is also Kamryn Phillips. We went to his house, and we started making videos. And the other group started making some videos, and they started off with a lot more views than us. We're like, oh crap, because they had someone who already had like 5,000 followers on TikTok, and we're like, oh my gosh, her name's Natalie. We're like, Natalie, you crazy? You have so many followers. This is insane.
Wow.
Because up to this point, I had like 200 followers on Instagram. Like, not super active in social media. But then we started, and my buddy Cam had a video that we thought just went to the moon. Had 14,000 views. We're like, We win. We won life. We're so cool. We got 40,000 views. We're those people. And then it kept going, and then I got one that had some good amount of views, and then I posted one out on the lake, like throwing a football to girls on a jet ski, and it didn't really get many views that day. But the next morning, before we went to school, we were sitting out in the car, and we were watching it, and every time we refreshed, it'd go up by like 20,000 views, and it kept going and going and going until it reached at like 900,000 views, and we're like freaking out. We're like, we're from school. We don't need this crap anymore. We're done. Obviously, obviously not. But we thought that we made it, and so we're like, this is sick. And so we kept going from there. And me and Kamryn, we chase each other. We already outpaced the whole challenge, and it was past that
Yeah.
already. And we were in spring, and just lots of fun things with that. But yeah, it was really something fun. It just started as a joke, and then it was just whatever we thought was funny at the time, and that's what TikTok was following at the time. And so we were really having a good time. But you asked about it, was it monetized? And short answer is yes, to an extent. But without a niche, it's really hard to get monetization at a significant level. Like I made a couple of $100 here, $100
Yep.
there. By the end of it, throughout everything, probably like $4,000, $5,000 in all. So nothing to write home about, but it was good money as a high school student. I thought I was awesome.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah,
Absolutely.
reaches 100%.
So, in your household, what age were you given a phone, allowed to have a phone, introduced into that whole new world?
That's a fantastic question, actually. So we always had a rule growing up where you get a phone when you turn 12, and you have to be able to afford it yourself. You're buying it. So I got a phone when I turned 12, and then you get social media when you turn 13. So got social media, and so everybody else in my school, they'd have like 500 followers, 600 followers because they'd follow people from elementary school. And then I grew up in Utah until I was 14. So that's called junior high there, not middle school. And so everybody had way more than me. And I was like, oh, cool. Like, I don't really care that much. I was never really into it. But that's a long answer to your short question.
Yeah.
So
No, that's
12 and
great.
then 13.
So, what can you remember a time when you first got a text message that was kind of on either spectrum of the emotions, like the one spectrum of, man, this is the coolest thing I've ever experienced, or wow, this is so much pain. I guess I'm just trying to put together, if you could remember how old you were when you started to realize, wow, this is quite a means of communication.
That was such an effective question. I have to thank you for that because it painted an exact picture of a moment in my mind. So that's
Mm.
how you know you're good. Jason knows his stuff. He asks good questions. I vividly remember being in the back seat of my mom's car, and I was texting with this girl from school. I had to have been in seventh grade, and I was in junior high, and I was texting this girl named Holly, and I was like, wow, she's really cute. And so I'm texting her, and this is like the first time I've ever started really talking to a girl and being like, oh, do you like me? Because I like you. And I was like 11 or 12. And that was the first time I like had significant emotion. So that was a very,
Mm,
very specific question that painted that imagery in my mind. But it was definitely having to do with the flirting, for sure. It's
for
a
sure.
big
Yeah.
time.
I mean, it lodges a moment. It keeps it there. It's Yeah, it's huge. Do you think texting, DMs, email, all the different forms of communication for your generation where you're at right now, which form do you think is the most prevalent, the most important, kind of the most go-to form?
Texting, absolutely 100%. And it's interesting because you mentioned BNI. So I'm a director for BNI. I'm an area director here in Tampa. And that means I talk a lot to a lot of chapters. I'm in, 5 different chapters every single week. And a chapter is a group of
Wow.
business that get together to refer each other. And they meet every single week. And so I go to speak to a lot of these. And one question we ask is we're talking about how to get referrals and how to really teach your referral partners and these other professionals how to refer you. And one of the things of that is a call to action.
Hmm.
And a question we always ask, we say, raise your hand if a phone call is your favorite way of communicating. And if at a group of 40, you'll have 5 hands go up. And then you'll ask, how many of you is email your number one way of communication? And you'll have another 4 to 7 go up.
Yep.
Many is text your favorite way of communication, and you'll have 30 hands going there. And so it's like, it's not just Gen Z, it's everybody, because
Yeah.
it's just, you can see it, you can ignore it if you want to. It's pretty simple.
Absolutely. What do you think are some of the texting, the poor etiquette for texting that you see that maybe happens across generations? Like if you text, someone older, what do you see some of that? What do you think maybe your generation, some of those poor etiquettes, the things that were like, yeah, we probably shouldn't do those, but we continue to do them.
Yeah, absolutely. I hate with a passion the non-words where people just take letters out of a word. I'm like, come on. As people grow older, like most of my generation has stopped doing that, but you still see people do it, and it's just like, come on, like that is just horrible. So I think that's pretty bad. But there's definitely a disconnect between generations. Now, with some people it's less, some people it's more, but I think a lot of it has to do with the separation of tonality from content.
Mm. Ooh, that's huge. Yeah, people aren't thinking through how this is going to come across. They're just kind of, going to town. That's kind of a huge thing. Let's back up for a second. So at a young age, are communicating with a lot of people older than you. So
Yeah.
what was that like in the beginning? Was it nerve wracking? Was it, were you just prepared for it? Did you have to grow into it? Because a lot of people at 21, they're not quite, at that level that you are communicating with all those people. And so walk us through what's kind of been the big learning for that.
Absolutely. So a mission really teaches you things. There's a common saying that, this 2-year mission gives you 10 years of life experience. And I would say that is absolutely true because all day, every day, you are talking to people.
Hmm.
You're far from home. You don't know anybody. You're with your companion every second of every day. And you just talk to people. And in our case, we preach about Jesus Christ and we teach people and read scriptures with them. And with that, you learn a lot about people because people are people and people are people. Because
Yep.
everybody's generally the same with different styles and flings and all those things to them. And so you realize it doesn't matter who you are. We all put our pants on the same way. So often you just get rejected all day, every day, dozens of times a day. And so that fear of failure, the fear of rejection, I feel is lessened significantly by that experience. So with that being said, coming into it, coming back to Florida, coming back to the United States, doing what I'm now doing in BNI and Articulate Advantage and speaking to people, it was something I did in a foreign country, in a different language, with a different culture. And so coming back to America, it felt super easy. Because
Mm.
I'm like, if they don't like me, if I mess up, so what? Nobody died.
Yeah.
So people are still eating dinner tonight. And so that just a different change in mindset with that. And so the fear factor was never really there. Obviously, you're going to have some symptoms of, oh, my hands are shaking, my heart's beating. Did I prepare enough for this to make it flow well, to make it connect with the audience? So there's still that, but it was never the fear of, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. I can't do this.
Sure.
So,
Sure. Have
yeah.
you had any, older folks that you're working with? Have you experienced any of the talking down because you're younger, any of the passive aggressive? Well, he wouldn't understand, he's barely out of diapers. Any of those kind of jokes, or people pretty legit with it?
Absolutely. It was really funny because it was a couple months after I got home from my mission. I was going to present to this BNI chapter down. They meet at the Riverwalk on Tampa Bay. They meet at a venue down there.
Oof.
And they're a 50-member chapter, 50 business owners in this room, and they have a
Wow.
chapter president. And I was scheduled to go speak at their chapter this next week. And my dad, Spencer Reynolds, he is the executive director, the franchise owner of Hillsborough and Pinellas County for BNI Tampa. And he gets a call from their president. He's calling him. He's like, I see this Kamryn. I'm guessing he's your son. He looks too young to be doing this. Are you sure he should be coming and presenting to our chapter? Because they're a room full of business owners, right? They are business owners, and they think like business owners. And they're like, this young kid. I was 20 at the time. I just turned 20, like 4 months before that. And he's like, that's an excellent question. And he walks in my room. He goes, here, Eric, talk to Kamryn. And so Eric, I'm talking to him. Eric's a good buddy. But I'm talking to him. He's like, yeah, so Kamryn, I just had a concern of you being so young and coming to speak to our chapter. I'm not sure this is going to be the right fit. I'm not sure you're going to be able to do this well. I'm grabbing the phone. I'm like, hey, Eric, what's up, man? How you doing? Yeah, I totally understand your concern with that. What's this 20-year-old punk going to come in and talk to a room full of 50 business owners about? I know BNI really well, and that's what I'm talking about. So I don't have to be a master over all of your businesses. I'm talking to him about all these things. And he's still like, okay, we'll see how it goes. He wasn't sold. So I show up that next week. I do this 16-minute presentation in front of all of them about something in BNI, and after the meeting, I'm helping put away some like tables and chairs and things. And Eric comes up to me. He says, Kamryn, I'm sorry. You did amazing. I will never say anything ever again. I was like, thanks, man. And he calls my dad. He's like, Spencer, he was amazing. This is fantastic. And so it's always as long as you've got the skills to back it up.
Yeah.
It's really fun to play with because I've had that happen multiple.
I love that. I love that. That's great. So we're flipping back and forth, but as you think through texting, being such a prevalent form now, ghosting is now, such a prevalent thing. And so especially like your generation, when somebody, is ghosted, what does that signify? Is it just, is the person going, well, they're just busy right now and I'm sure they'll get back to me? Or do they know, no, they're ghosting me and they're trying to cut me out,
Yeah. Going down to a fundamental level, it's because there's a perceived lack of value. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean business value, monetary value. It's, what do we want out of communication?
Yep.
We either want stimulation, we want humor, we want, to get ahead in something, whether it's in business or family or friends or relationship-wise. And so being dry is just a lack of that value. And a lot of times it's that stimulation and having fun with your friends because let's be real, humor is the most important commodity to Gen Z on the planet. That's why we scroll endlessly. That's why we text our friends, is just to get that humor. And so that's really what we're looking for in most situations. So even if you're in a business situation, you're texting someone, trying not to get ghosted, no matter what the context of the interaction, if you can infuse some humor into that, you will do infinitely better dealing with Gen Z. And I wholeheartedly.
Yeah. Are there any other, us older generations texting Gen Z, are there any other nuggets like that that you would give us? Because that one that's huge. That's gold.
Absolutely. Nobody likes to see a wall of text. Because a lot of times, especially older generations, will see text as, hey, this is email, but faster, or it's easier to see. Right. And so it's right. If you're going to have paragraphs, break it up into a conversation. That's a big reason of like, that's overwhelming. And so if you do get a response back, it might not be for a while, because if I get on my phone and I see a wall of text, I'm like, I'm going to come back to that later.
I'm out. Yeah.
they'll respond to all these shorter texts, or oh, here's TikTok, or oh, here's Instagram, and get distracted with it. So
Yeah,
break it up. Conversation for sure, I think, is super important to not get ghosted.
that's good. Some of the research says Gen Z doesn't really like to talk on the phone. What do you think about that? Is that true? Is that it just depends on, maybe who it is?
I'd say generally, absolutely, that's the case. Even though it irks my soul because talking on the phone is just so effective. It's the best. Okay, it's the second best, maybe third. First best is talking in person. Second best is being able to see someone when you're talking to them, like we are right now. And then third best, I'd say, is talking on the phone because you miss out on the context. You miss out on the body language. You miss out on the tone of voice. And so
Yeah.
when you call, you at least have the tone of voice because that delivers so much of what you're actually meaning to say. And so that's why texting is hard. And there's a big disconnect in that of the context from the content of the text.
Mm,
And I believe older generations do have a problem with that. Generally, not saying everybody, but generally because they're like, oh, they should know what I'm meaning. He
right.
should know I'm trying to say this way. And it's like, we don't really. We're just guessing. And most people, it just depends on their current mood.
Yeah.
So you could be saying the most amazing, you're so excited for this thing ever. But if you say it in a way that doesn't explicitly show that, then if they're having a bad day, they're thinking you hate them. You're sending a hate letter to them. So
Wow.
it misses out
What
on that.
I love that. What advice would you give? Everyone's done it at some point, but people who just rattle off either hate, rattle off frustration, they send something inappropriate.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to people, about what to think through before you press send? I mean, because lives can be damaged. Like, it's amazing how quickly, someone's whole life can be, you know, thrown up in arms, dumped out the window because of a text message.
That's a good question. To deal with the negativity and all those unwanted circumstances, text message is the easiest way to say, exit out of that, or delete the conversation, block the person. So it's really easy to deal with. But to steer away from it, I think a lot of it comes from misunderstanding. Because let's be real, if you're gonna, it's the common adage of don't break up over text.
Right.
Because it's easy, it's less emotionally involved, it's easier to get away from. So I think a big part of it has to do just avoiding it.
Yeah.
And kind of a side note, but as an example, in Argentina, people use WhatsApp for everything. Outside of the United States, most people use WhatsApp for communicating.
Yeah.
And most messages when I was in Argentina were not text, they were audio messages.
Huh.
So it doesn't really happen here a lot. I do with my friends sometimes, but almost every single message I ever sent in Argentina was you have your phone and you, hey, and then WhatsApp, you just send this audio message. You can do it in like Apple Messages now, and you can do it over, Messenger and all these different services. But that bridges a lot of that gap. People do it because they didn't want to take the time to type, and you can speed it up to 2 times speed and all these things. But it really helped with what's their tone of voice? What do they actually mean? So
Yep.
that with a lot of the avoiding those circumstances. So I hope that answers the question or not.
I love
I
it.
just think of the best method
That's huge.
for those situations.
No, I love that. So, I'd love to know. We've got a lot of parents listening, and um, you and I are in different. I'm probably your dad's age, and so I'm always curious about how other parents have parented, especially because if I can teach my kids how to communicate, especially at a young age, like it just sets them up for success. And so I'm curious if you could think back, in your childhood, times in your teenage years, was there any special sauce that you saw that your parents made sure, these are some things they did regularly because, not everyone's 21 and can stand up in front of a room of adults and, communicate. Not everyone can, and so that's really cool. It's cool that your parents, kind of brought, and it's a lot is on you too, but it's kind of neat to see how it all came together. So would love to know any thoughts you have about that.
Absolutely. So one of the biggest things that came to mind when you asked that was my parents would always make us talk to the person that we wanted something from. Right? If it
Mm,
was like, "Oh, I want to go get that ice cream." All right, go order it. Or if it's, "Hey, I got to call this person. Can you call Jimmy's dad, ask him if we can play?" No, but
yes.
you can call here and had the phone to us. We're like, "No." And he's like, "Yes, you are calling." So, I think that's a big advantage, and I think that's an excellent teaching point of you got to communicate if you want it, and then you got to do the work for it. Because how easy is it for a parent to say, "Hey," da, 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 and do it for them?
Yeah.
But as a kid, that's like a mountain, and you're like, "Oh my gosh, holy crap!" But you can't get better at it if you're not practicing, if you're not
Right.
actively doing it. So, I think that was a big point. Was you got to do the communication if you want something.
Yeah. Do you have siblings?
I have 3 siblings, 2
Okay.
older brothers, adopted sister.
So are they as well comfortable getting in front of a room, or any of them like, ooh, no, that's not so much for me.
So my oldest brother, he is definitely more of a let me just sit with my computer, I'll be fine. He's fine talking with people, um, but getting up in front of a room, that's not his favorite necessarily. He's not the person to go up and talk to a girl ever, no matter what. But then you got my next brother, and he's a big bodybuilder. He is comfortable doing it. He likes doing it. He's in BNI as well, doing the presentations, and so he enjoys it. He likes talking to people. Then you got me, but then my little sister, she's 14, or no, she's 15, and she does not like nothing in that area at all whatsoever. She's like, "No, thank you, stay away. I'll go back to my room and sit there all day." So might just be a phase, but it's definitely more
Absolutely.
just
No, that's
practice.
great.
So
It's great sometimes looking at that family dynamic and just even some of those little practical skills of like, no, if you want it, you've got to go ask. I love
mm,
that. So speaking to fellow Gen Zers who are listening, watching this podcast, what are a couple of communication tips or communication challenges that you would give to those fellow Gen Zers when it comes to their communication?
something I talk to my clients about is there's 2 main fields of communication when you're really working on it, and it's the content versus the context. And I say the content is your verbal eloquence.
Mm.
It's what you're saying. It's the do you have frames to frame what you're doing? Like Vin Jiang, one of my favorite communication people, influencers. He's got this one frame that I use all the time with my clients. Is one thing, 2 sides, 3 steps, and you can almost frame any conversation inside of the 3 steps to this are boom boom boom, and you sound smarter, you sound more eloquent, you sound articulate. And so there's a lot of things you can do in your eloquence, but then your dynamics are what make you sound interesting. It's what makes people want to listen to you, and that's your rhythm, your voice, your tone, your all those different things. And so people in general don't understand what they're doing.
Mm.
And by that, I'm not saying, oh, you don't know what you're doing. I'm saying they don't actively know when they're saying like a million times in a sentence, or
Right.
or any of those non-words or filler words, or even lexical gaps. Lexical gaps are a fun subject. I like that. But take a video of yourself. Talk about
Mm.
your day. Go back and watch it. Take a video of yourself reading or telling a story of what happened to you last month or a year ago, and look back at that story, because those 2 things will show you how you communicate, and then you can build from there. I think that's the base point to start out with.
It's huge. Boy, that's powerful. Absolutely powerful. Okay, so as we kind of round this conversation, let's do the same then for millennials, Gen X, Boomers. Speak to the older audience members for a second. Give us a couple nuggets to remember when we're communicating, whether it's text, whether it's face-to-face email, but just we're communicating to Gen Zers. A couple nuggets to remember.
Have you ever seen the YouTube channel Charisma on Command?
Oh, yeah.
Love that stuff. They're actually getting started up again as of 2025. So they for those of the listeners who don't know what this is, it's a YouTube channel called Charisma on Command, and it deep dives into charisma, and they do spotlights on specific people, normally movie stars and athletes and all these different ones, but they did one on Ryan Reynolds. Well, they've done multiple, but one of them, it focuses in on this always assuming the best intent. So even when someone says, wow, I like your glasses, he's like, thank you. I got them last week. They're pretty slick, aren't they? And so it's always, he takes everything, not at the face value or not what they're actually saying, but he takes it at the best intent possible. And I think that's just a fun thing in life in general. One, you'll enjoy life more. It'll be more humorous, but also anybody on the opposite end of that, they're like, what the heck? Okay, that doesn't work on them. You're above it because you're thinking, oh, that doesn't necessarily work. And then they're thinking, oh, if that's who they expect me to be, then subconsciously they'll start living up to that a little bit more. And so I think assuming the best intent, even when it's clearly not so, is just a fun little tool to use.
Oh, that's huge. And we'll link to that YouTube channel because that's absolutely incredible. Okay, so at the end of every podcast interview, I ask every guest the same 3 questions. We're building this online communicators library. You can go and find great resources like that. And so, do you have a favorite speaker? Every time you listen to them, you're like, to blow my mind, fill up my cup. Can't wait to, send that to somebody else. Anybody fall into that category for you?
Vin Jiang, for sure.
Okay.
Love Vin Jiang.
Always helps to have a magic background as well.
For sure. Absolutely.
If you're a podcast listener, not everybody is, but if you are, is there a guilty pleasure or a development podcast that you're like, oh, I just keep coming back to it? Every time I hear an episode, I just got to forward it to somebody.
Absolutely. There's 2 of them. Acquired is the most incredible podcast. It's basically an audiobook every month on a deep dive into a specific company and how they grew and what made them successful.
Ooh.
It is the most ever. I don't know if you've ever watched it, but like they've interviewed, like what's his name? Facebook, Mark Zuckerberg.
Yep.
They've interviewed Mark Zuckerberg. They've done all these different things, and it's just absolutely incredible. And then the other one is, what's the one with Chris Williamson? You know what I'm talking about?
I don't, but I will find it from Chris Williamson. Absolutely.
It is called Modern Wisdom. Modern Wisdom. That is an excellent podcast.
And then lastly, is there a book? Do you have a favorite leadership book that you're like, oof, every leader should read this book?
One of my favorite books of all time. Well, I'll give you 2. Leadership and Just Life, The Traveler's Gift by Andy Andrews. Excellent book. I think that should be mandatory reading for everybody. But then for communication styles and different things like that, The Like Switch by Jack Schaefer and Marvin Carlins.
Wow.
Jack Schaefer is a retired FBI trainer. He trained agents to go turn foreign agents to double agents using, just abilities and different fun, awesome, charismatic things. And then Marvin Carlins is this PhD, and he was actually one of my adjunct professors last semester at USF. So that was kind of cool to be able to meet him. But those 2 books, I think, should be mandatory reading for everybody.
I love it. And we'll put that in the communicators library. So listeners, make sure that you go and get access to that. Kamryn, what's the best place people can find you, find out more information about your business, the things that you do, connect with you online? Where should we send them?
Articulateadvantage.com. Or you can go to articulate.breezy.site. Either one of them works and it'll take you to it. Find out a little bit more about Articulate Advantage, because one of the things I love is you can get so niched into things, and so you can play in the sandbox with more people. And so what I do, what you do is similar, but we don't do the same things. And so that's what I love about the communication space and the coaching space in general, is because you can get so niched with it.
That's great. Absolutely love it. Well, seriously, thank you. This was amazing. Thank you for just opening up your vault of wisdom and sharing. And I know that for sure, those of us who are older are going to, improve our texting. Those of us who are your age, we always have is some improvements to go. And so it's great to be able to text with people. And thank you to our listeners for being a part. And next week is our final episode of the series. If you missed any of them, make sure you go back and watch each episode. But thank you for listening to the Speak with People podcast. Kamryn, thanks again.
Thank you. It's fun.
Thank you for listening to the Speak with People podcast, where we believe that healthy communication is the key to unlocking your leadership potential. Thank you for leaving a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And thank you for every like and every comment. Every single time you cut and copy a link and send it to a coworker or a friend, it absolutely means the world, and it helps each other transform our communication skills. Lastly, don't forget about a great resource that's available to you: our communication skills library. At the end of every episode, we ask each guest their favorite speaker, their favorite podcast, their favorite book, and we've compiled all of those resources together to give you an amazing library to continue your growth and development. Thank you again for being a listener and for being a part of the Speak with People community.